I was hoping I could get the volcano in the background.
Ah, yes.
I don't think I will.
There were a couple of bits where we were pretty frozen there, but I feel like I kind of like it. This is what our life is right now, right? It's nice to actually see you face to face for once.
Yes. Hi.
I mean, first of all, thanks for taking the time out. It looks magnificent where you are. Do you want to give me a little bit of context as to, I guess, where you are, what you're sort of currently doing?
I'm currently in Kokopo in East New Britain. East New Britain, it's an island, not too small, but it's off the mainland of PNG. And over the last year or so, I've been spending a lot of time here, retracing family history and doing some filming and bits and pieces like that. And when Australia started making calls for people to come home, I kind of had to decide whether I wanted to go home and be quarantined. And for me at the time, I decided that staying here would be really useful to the community, where I could contribute some of my experience and skills for the time being as well. We're COVID-19 free. So I think so far it's been a good decision to stay here on the ground.
Yeah, I'm really keen to know as a filmmaker, how are you continuing to use the power of storytelling in your day-to-day?
Well, I guess one of the things that, I mean, it's just storytelling is such a great asset. You know, if you're someone who likes to tell stories, you can do it anywhere, anytime, can't you? Or many of the other projects that I was working on kind of came to a bit of a halt, whether it was business or storytelling or whatever it was. But I quickly became involved in a response team. So we started making, little videos about awareness, and made it sort of like locally relevant, because there's a lot of information that comes from, WHO, but it's, if it's in English and it's, it's got images of white people on it, then people find it hard to connect with. So we tried to make some locally relevant content.
It'd be cool to get some context around, I guess, the flow of information, particularly in more remote locations. I think, Port Moresby and the NCD is, there's, I would say there's almost kind of like over information sometimes there, and information travels in different ways. How are people staying informed, and how are people responding to health advice? Are there enough testing facilities, for example, for coronavirus?
Yeah, here in East New Britain Province, the blanket messages about, what COVID-19 is and how the precautionary measures are, I guess they're all around, but I think those messages don't have the same sense of urgency around them that they should have, because things do get a little bit lost in translation. We did some walkarounds actually on the street, just asking people what they thought about COVID-19 and how it would affect them. And overwhelmingly people draw on their faith, saying that as long as they follow the 10 Commandments and that this is the Holy Land and PNG won't be affected. So we're trying to work on that kind of those communication channels. I am part of a response team, and we're trying to work out all the different ways we can communicate and get messages, especially out to our villages and really remote areas. So we need to connect with local LLGs and, local churches and local leaders and village elders, and we need to make sure that we can communicate to them, and then they can then communicate to their communities, so that there's also coming from a trusted source for them. Yesterday, actually, I went up to a rural hospital up at Warrangoy. Some of the stories, I mean, they cannot handle an outbreak here. They just do not have a health system that exists currently, and you add any sort of outbreak on top of that, and this place would just be flawed. They told one story about how they had a patient that came in with, COVID-like symptoms, and the patient was pushed from one department to another department to another department because nobody wanted to touch them, because they're not, they don't have the training, they're not educated on what COVID-19 is and how to manage it. They don't have PPE, they don't have the basic gear to wear. and so they're scared. They're scared for themselves to touch anyone who may have it. They're also scared because their families come home to our village, then you'll be sick and you'll give it to us. And so, they're not prepared in any sense. It's really even more critical in places like here that we just remain as vigilant as possible for as long as possible to not allow it to come anywhere near this place.
What's the sentiment that you've sort of found? Are people connecting more? Are they feeling more isolated because of this? There's this great big sea between us all, but it's also a good opportunity to be kind of connected on a more digital level as well. So I'm kind of keen for just your observations, what you've heard on the ground, your just sort of general anecdotes in that.
Here, I guess that kind of utilizing digital platforms and connecting in those ways only applies to a very small portion of the population. The other thing is that here, we haven't been affected. We don't have any confirmed cases of COVID-19, and so the social distancing isn't a thing here at the moment. So it's more restricted. I think if you're in another island like I am, you're not going to have those new digital connections that most in the West have. You're going to rely on the old ways of communicating because you don't really have a choice.
We as these kind of city folk who are used to having access to every amenity in the world 24 hours a day, and it's an inconvenience for us to work from home and not travel into the office. And there's a lot to learn from a lot of the people who you're in contact with day to day now, who probably do this on a daily basis. They spend the majority of their time at home in the village. What can we learn from them?
People deal with having to wait and be patient a lot more here. You have to be patient because you can't just book an Uber or order something online. You don't have any of those sort of instant gratifications and access and luxuries that you have back home. So everyone here has a garden. So the one thing that people were saying is, isn't it great how people are worried about buying toilet paper in Australia and they're buying canned foods and stuff that's going to last a long time. But here, everyone's just like, well, we're not going to run out of food. Everybody has a garden. We have different sets of worries. We're not worried about food and toilet paper. Staying home and having to spend time at home and being stuck in a certain place for a period of time. I mean, that is very commonplace for a lot of people. And there's plenty that you can learn from coming to communities like here where everything's a little bit slower. Everything takes a little bit more time. You learn patience. You learn, how to be grateful for a lot of small things. You take time to create stuff for yourself because you can't necessarily go somewhere and get a service. People are connected. We don't all walk around like this. We actually look at people in their eyes and we say hello. People all day, every day, strangers. Good day, how are you? Hello, good afternoon, good morning. I really like that human connection. I think that's something that's missing a lot back home.